Welcome to my channel once again. Today we are going to look at fetal circulation. So we have description of fetal circulation. So fetal circulation is a unique pattern of blood flow where blood containing oxygen and nutrients gets to the fetus, as well as waste are eliminated through the placenta with the help of the umbilical cord. Why? Because at this point in time, most of the fetal organs are not fully developed to carry out some specific functions. So the baby has to rely on the mother for nutrition and oxygenation and waste elimination. So before we start, let's look at some few structures that play a critical role in this process. So you have the placenta in connection with the umbilical cord. So the placenta will now function as the fetus respiratory organ for exchange, then as an excretory organ for removal of waste, and then a nutritional organ where nutrients get to the fetus. And this is all done through maternal blood flow, where this oxygen and the nutrients are taken from the maternal blood via a, a capillary within the chronic villi that picks up this oxygen and nutrients through diffusion, so that the maternal blood and the fetal blood doesn't mix up. So just look at an important thing to note about the umbilical cord. So the umbilical cord have three vessels, and that's one umbilical vein that carries oxygen from the placenta, and then two umbilical arteries that carry deoxygenated blood to the placenta. This is how it functions as compared to the normal heart, where arteries carries oxygenated blood except for pulmonary artery, and then veins carry deoxygenated blood except for pulmonary vein. But here the umbilical vein plays the role of oxygenation, and then the umbilical arteries plays the role of carrying deoxygenated blood. These functions as a result of the fetal structures are not fully developed to carry out its usual function. So these have to play the role for them prior to delivery. So let's look at the shunts. So what are the shunts? So the shunts are just specialized pathway that help bypass a non-functional organ in the fetus, especially the lungs and the liver, because they are not fully mature to do their usual roles. So what are the shunts? There are three main shunts we are going to look at. We have the ductus venosus, which connects the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava to escape the liver. Then we have the foramen ovale, which connects the right atrium to the left atrium to also escape the lungs. Then we have ductus arteriosus, which connects the pulmonary artery to the aorta to also escape the lungs. This is because the lungs aren't inflated, so blood bypasses them, and then the placenta will now do the work of oxygenation, not the lungs, because they are not fully matured to take up their roles. So let's look at the diagram presentation of fetal circulation. So after this, we'll look at a slideshow presentation to serve as a backup and reference. So kindly follow this cursor to know where we are. So first, this is the placenta, and this is where the exchange occurs. So the villi picks up the needed oxygen into the umbilical vein in the fetal blood here, and this is the only umbilical vein that do the work of oxygenation. the red colored one. So blood containing oxygen move from here through the umbilical cord in the umbilical vein, the single one, towards the liver. So when it gets to the liver also needs to be perfused because it has its own cells as well, even though it's not ready to function normally. So small amount of blood given to the liver for perfusion. The blood won't go there because it's not matured enough to play its role. So the first shunt occurs with the help of the ductus venosus, a duct that connects to a vein. So blood is shunted away into the inferior vena cava, away from the liver. So this blood in the inferior vena cava goes straight into the right atrium. Blood here will have to bypass the lungs because the lungs is not ready and it's immature. So the blood has to shunt away from going through the pulmonary artery with the help of the Eustachian valve through a shunt known as the foramen ovale. So blood in the right atrium containing oxygen will quickly move here into the left atrium, down into the left ventricle, then pump into the aorta, then goes through the ascending aorta to supply the upper extremities, such as the brain being a structure over there, and then via the coronary artery to the heart itself. Good. Now, blood coming down from the upper extremities through the superior vena cava also goes into the right atrium. But when it gets here, it doesn't shunt because the Eustachian valve has already done its blockage over there. So blood entering here mix up with small amount of oxygenated blood, because blood coming down here is less oxygenated, but when it gets here mixed with a little bit of oxygen, so still needs to be supplied. So blood here will now go down to the right ventricle and then pump into the pulmonary artery. Now the pulmonary artery here, we know send blood to the lungs, but we know the lungs is not matured at this point, full with fluid, and that causes an increased pressure over there. Even though the lungs will be perfused, but blood won't flow inside because it's not ready to perform its function. So we have to shunt the blood away from the lungs. So there comes in the ductus arteriosus. Which will shunt blood from the pulmonary artery into the descending aorta, and this blood goes down to perfuse the lower structures at the lower extremities of the fetus. So this blood goes, perfuse the organs over there, and then returns through the internal iliac arteries, which branches to these two umbilical arteries, where all waste and then deoxygenated blood goes through these two arteries and then head towards the placenta for exchange to occur. Then the cycle continues. So we can now have the slideshow presentation. So this is the beginning of the whole process. So we have from the placenta to the umbilical vein. So at this point where the oxygenated blood is taken from the placenta through the umbilical vein towards the liver. Then at this point, we have bypassing the liver via the ductus venosus. So blood gets to the liver, perfuses the liver with a little amount, and then shunts through the ductus venosus to the inferior vena cava. So in the inferior vena cava, blood flows towards the heart and gets to the right atrium. With the assist of the eustachian valve, blood is shunted through the foramen ovale into the left atrium. So at this point, the blood is shunted by the foramen ovale, which bypasses the lungs. So from the right to the left atrium, and then goes down to the left ventricle, and then through the ascending aorta. So through the ascending aorta, the blood goes to perfuse the upper extremities of the body, including the coronary arteries, which will now supply the heart, and other organs like the brain as well will also get a taste of the oxygenated blood. Then we have blood that is now returning from the superior vena cava into the right atrium, going down the right ventricle, will now be pumped through the pulmonary artery towards the lungs. So as I said, some of the organs need to be perfused. So the lungs also get perfused, but we don't want the blood in the lungs because the lungs is not fully matured for its function at that point in time. So the blood will be diverted with the help of the ductus arteriosus. So a duct to an artery, which is the descending artery. So the descending aorta will now supply the lower part of the body of the fetus, and then all this oxygenated blood will now be carried by the internal iliac arteries, which branches into the two umbilical arteries, then takes the blood back to the placenta for exchange to take place. So over here I have some key points and summary of the whole process that will make the work easier. So by skimming or scanning through it will help you grasp a key concept throughout the whole presentation. Thank you for your time, and then we'll continue next time on another presentation that will be helpful in our studies. Thank you, and we meet next time.